Okay.
all together.
My name is Jerry Gill. Today is December 15th, 2008. I'm visiting with Dr. Tom Thedford in his home northwest of Stillwater, Oklahoma. This is interviews for the O State Storage Project of the Oklahoma World History Research Program. Tom, you've had a long and distinguished career on the faculty at Oklahoma State University and our College of Veterinary Medicine. But I'd like to back up, is that okay with you a little bit, and talk a little bit about your early life? Could you share your information maybe about where you grew up, your family, some of the things that influenced your life early on?
I was born in Smith County, Tyler, Texas. That's eastern Texas, east of Dallas. And we lived on a small farm that my great-grandfather originally bought, and then my family lived there. And I lived in Tyler until I was 14 years old on this small cattle. We had cattle, sheep, and pigs, and just some farming. And my dad always worked off the farm as well as the farm. And so I've been around livestock since I was I guess ever since I was born. And we had that farm until just when my mother went into an assisted living facility back in, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. We sold the place, and so it was there. We moved from there then to out in the high plains to Crosbyton, Texas. And I was in school there 1 year. And the next year we rented a farm over north of Lorenzo, Texas. And this is near the Lubbock area. And I finished high school at Idalou, which is just east of Lubbock. And then from there, went off to college, Texas A&M. 6 years there, got a bachelor's degree in animal science and a doctor of veterinary medicine degree from A&M in 1959.
Well, maybe sort of backing up again, Tom, to your earlier life a little bit. Two things come to my mind. One is it must have been a heck of a change from East Texas out to the high plains in West Texas. Well, what was the story about the family moving that far?
The reason for the move, it was a big change from pine trees to flat nothing almost for miles and miles. Daddy was somewhat of an entrepreneur, and one of the things that he saw happening was mechanization of cotton farming. And when John Deere came out with a cotton harvesting machine, a cotton stripper, he was one of the first owners of one. And the year before we moved, he went out there and harvested cotton. And with a machine and 2 men, you could harvest up as high as 20 or 25 bales of cotton in a day, whereas it would take 5 or 6 people 2 or 3 days to harvest 1 bale. And so that was the reason that he did that. We got into that business, and the next year we moved out there, and he wanted to farm in that area, and he did for a number of years. And I helped him with the farming, and we farmed for 3 or 4 years, I guess, out there.
Well, Tom, what special influence on you growing up? Your parents, or what some values that you learned that you took with you the rest of your life?
Well, I think probably my family was. We had a big family. I had 4 sisters, and I was the oldest and the only son. So probably one of the biggest things that I got impressed on me very early was I had to look out for my little sisters, and the responsibility of doing that, and the responsibility of farming. When while we were in East Texas, when I was 9 years old, Daddy was drafted into the military during World War II. And at that point in time, we had he had about 500 head of hogs on feed, and had about 50 or 60 head of cattle, and we had to sell the hogs because there wasn't any way a 9-year-old could take care of them. But I continued taking care of the cattle while he was gone, and he wasn't in the Navy, and he had so many dependents with 5 children at that time. As soon as the war was over, this was in 1944, I guess, when he went in. And as soon as the war was over, he was one of the first ones to get discharged and sent on back home. So I guess I learned hard work and responsibility at a very early age, primarily because of having to take care of this stuff. Started milking cows when I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. It was my responsibility to see them milked every day.
You had to grow up fast, didn't you? That when your father was gone. Wow, mercy. Thank you. So, did your undergraduate studies at College Station at Texas A&M?
Yep.
What do you remember about your undergraduate experience there? I'm sure you were in the Corps, right?
Right. First 2 years mandatory Corps, and it was one of the best experiences I ever had in my life. It was tough. It was hard to. You had to do some more fast growing up, but I was just 17 when I went down there, and I was just a little old bitty guy. Weighed about 130 pounds, I think. And first semester, I grew about 3 inches and put on about 25 pounds. It was a good experience, but the Corps. I've thought many times, I think that probably was the thing that really developed my ability to study and my ability to learn. I didn't get very many challenges in high school. High school was very easy. I was just in high school 3 years. I skipped my junior year in high school because I had enough credits to graduate with lacking one. That was English, so I took it by correspondence. And I never was really challenged in high school. And I got down there, believe me, I got challenged in a hurry.
about learning and time management both, wasn't it?
I never even had a science course except just general science in high school. And I was going into veterinary medicine and chemistry, and I had to buckle down and get with it in a hurry. And that was the good thing about the Corps. You were required, we had what they call 4-point call to quarter, CQ, and every night at 7 o'clock, you sit at your desk with, not 4.6 point, you have four chair legs and your 2 feet on the floor, and you had to have a book open in front of you, and you sat there from 7 till 10. You couldn't even get up unless you had permission to. And at 10, you had 30 minutes to go take a shower and get ready for bed and be in bed by 10 o'clock. And the next morning, you was up at 6:30 and on with the rest of the day. But, if you're sitting there, you might as well be studying.
That's right.
No radio, and no television. Of course, didn't even have television then. But, had to be quiet. You couldn't even talk to your roommate. You had to sit there, and that was study time. It taught me to study.
Well, Tom, did you know when you went to A&M that you wanted to be a vet? And if so, where did that come from?
Well, yes, I did. That was one of the. I guess I'd always enjoyed. My mother used to love telling stories. I don't know if they were true or not, but she said he used to shoot birds with a BB gun and then try to treat them to make them well. Now, that was her story. I don't know if that's true or not. But when I always enjoyed working with livestock, and that's, we always had cats and dogs around the place, and it was usually my responsibility to help take care of some of that stuff. And then when we lived at Crosbyton, after we moved to West Texas, one of the people there that was very influential in my development was Dr. Bill Romaine, who was the local veterinarian. And I would sometimes make some calls with him, and he'd come out to our place to look at our cows or horses or whatever, And after when I got into school, when I started out in school, I was lucky enough to get a scholarship. It was a Sears Roebuck scholarship, entering freshman in agriculture. So I enrolled in agriculture, and the pre-vet curriculum and the animal science curriculum were almost lockstep. It was actually animal husbandry at that time, I guess they call it. So I had that for 1 year, that scholarship, and so I did my pre-veterinary work that way. And then I got the animal science degree by doing additional work with my veterinary curriculum. And both degrees have been very useful.
Did you go 2 years on your pre-vet program at that time? Then when you went into veterinary school?
4-year vet school. Yes. I was lucky and got in after 2 years.
Well, so could you share a little bit about your professional career before you come to Oklahoma State University? So you graduated from vet school at A&M in what year? In
1959.
1959.
And I immediately went to work as a private veterinarian for Santa Gertrudis and Quarter Horse Ranch at Waco. And I worked there for about 6 months. And that was not what I thought it was going to be. And we had a little disagreement. And I decided the best thing for me to do was move on. And there's a little professional thing. They asked me to do some things that I didn't think was honest. And I couldn't do them legally. And I had responsibility to the state of Texas and my colleagues. And so I decided that wasn't the place for me. And I left there and went into practice in Floydada, Texas. And this was a general practice, everything from garter snakes to elephants, whatever came across the board. And did probably about 60% of my work was food animals, and cattle and sheep and a few goats. A little bit of horse work and 30-40% maybe dogs and cats. And I was there for almost 6 years.
So how did you hear about the opening at Oklahoma State University? You came here in 65.
65.
Right? So how did you find out about the job? And could you tell us a little bit about the recruiting process?
I had one daughter at that point, and my wife was expecting her second child. And I came home one day from work, and it dawned on me that even though my clinic was right next door to my house, that I had not seen my coming 4-year-old daughter awake in over 2 weeks. I left before she got up. If I came in during the day, she was usually taking a nap, and then I didn't get through working until she'd gone to bed. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way of making a living than this. So I decided to seek employment somewhere else, something different. And I had 2 or 3 options. One option, I filled out the papers for a commission in the Air Force, which is the second time I'd done that. And the first time I went to work for this ranch, got offered that job and didn't go. I didn't mail these for a few days, and I mailed out some papers to looked at government employment, and I wrote Texas A&M, Kansas State University, Missouri, and Oklahoma State University, inquiring about jobs. And Oklahoma State was the only one that had a job opening at that time, and they agreed to interview me if I would come up. And I did. The job was in the small animal clinic as a small animal clinician, and I decided that that would be okay. So I sold my clinic, loaded up I had both daughters at that time. In the interim, the second one had been born. And loaded up the kids and my wife, and we moved to Stillwater.
Well, who was Dean at that time?
Dean was, just a minute.
Holmes, was it?
Holmes? Yeah, Glenn Holmes, yes. The guy that hired me was Gene Jones, who was a small animal clinician there. And Wiley Wolf was the department head. Interesting combination of people.
Well, I was going to ask you, as I understand, your career took you more large animal and food animal practice. So your first teaching assignment though was in small animal.
What happened?
Yeah, can you kind of share how you finally got over in large animal?
Well, I came here in December, and along toward the end of, I guess it was in June of '66, Dr. Lewis Moe, who was one of the original faculty members here at the college, and was the ambulatory clinician, the farm services clinician, made calls out in the country and treated animals out there. Dr. Moe retired. Dr. Wolf called me one day and asked me would I be interested in taking that job. And that was more to my liking than the small animal work. I enjoyed working with the small animal, but I didn't like being inside. So I took that job, and in September then I moved into the large animal. Well, actually, that's not totally true. That summer, Dr. Jones, who was a small animal man, broke his foot. He couldn't work. Dr. Acree, who was the other small animal clinician, left and took a job in practice down in Midwest City. So I was the only small animal clinician left. Simultaneously, with the Guatemala contract that was going on with AID, USAID, Dr. Williams and Dr. Johnson were both sent down to Guatemala. The other two people that were in the clinic had gone to other jobs. So in the mornings, I ran the small animal clinic. A new graduate, Dr. Taylor was his name, did some of the large animal work, and I did the ambulatory in the afternoons. So it was two of us running the clinic for this summer.
you might not have had much time to see your daughters that summer either, did you?
But then in September, when we had full staff at that point, and things leveled out, on we went.
Well, Tom, what can you recall a little bit of what the facilities were like and equipment when you got there in '65?
Well, they were better than I had in practice, but they're still pretty crude in many respects. We had pretty good working chutes for livestock. We had one big old surgery table, and we had the infamous wrestling mat that we used most of the time.
Well, tell me a bit about that. We were sharing earlier off camera that Dr. Lester had visited a little bit about that, but they had the large operating table, as I understood it. It didn't tilt, didn't have, you couldn't move it up and down, so it was difficult getting large animals on it. So
well, it would tilt over, but you couldn't do anything; it just went flat. And you had to strap the animals to it before you laid them down. Well, they didn't like that too much.
And it wasn't hydraulics,
Well, it was hydraulic, but it was a slow moving thing, and you had to get them tied where they couldn't jump off of it, and you couldn't anesthetize them standing. So many times it was just much simpler just to anesthetize them, let them collapse onto the wrestling mat, which was, I don't know, 3 inches thick or so. It was, I may not have been that thick, but it was thick. And they could lay on it, and it wouldn't put pressure on their nerves. It didn't cause paralysis to the animals, and it was so much easier on our knees.
So let me try to get this picture, Tom. I mean, you were talking about this, say large cow. Okay, so get down. This is a wrestling mat. I mean, literally, that you probably, I guess, cleaned up, sterilized, and laid them on the mat. So you're down there on your hands and knees, operating on this cow. What was some of the trials and tribulations of that kind of surgery?
Well, it wasn't too bad. It'd been better if you'd be standing. That was awful hard on your back after a while. Your knees got kind of tired, but you learned to be pretty efficient and try to get through it a little faster. But and then it was always the job of as soon as you got them up, as soon as you got them awake and got them back on their feet and moved off, then you had to clean the mat right quick before the gore got dry and you had trouble getting it clean. But it worked. It was a pretty good system.
Yeah, I've heard the expression, go to the mat, but never thought about it in terms of operating on an animal. It's a great story. Well, who were some of the key faculty? You mentioned some names earlier, but when you came there, and then might sort of follow that up with what did you remember about some of those early faculty members?
Well, the department head was Dr. Wiley Wolf. Dr. Wolf was an Iowa native, but did his veterinary work at Texas A&M, and he was one of the most unique individuals I ever knew. He was department head, and the man was everywhere. He always knew what was going on, and you'd see him sitting in his office, and you'd think, if somebody walked in, they'd think this guy probably doesn't ever get out of that office, but he knew exactly what was going on everywhere, all of the time. He was a really unique guy, and very nice guy, very fair and upfront. He believed in teaching, and wanted you to do your teaching and take care of the students. And he told me when I came up here, he said, go to the meetings, learn new material, teach the students, do your job, and I'll take care of you. And that's what he did. He was a good man. Some of the others was Dr. Newton Neal was our radiologist, and we always laughed at Newton, and we'd tease him about being an old bear, because he was back in kind of a dark place, and he'd come out of his cave growling, you know. He was a neat guy, and he took care of the radiology stuff. Lester Johnson was our large animal clinic head, and an absolute gentleman, one of the most gentle and nice and professional people I've ever known in my life, and had a long and very deep friendship that continues to this day. He was a fantastic veterinarian and just a gentleman too. Another one was Dr. Eric Williams, who was an immigrant from Wales, and he was always everywhere doing everything. I had some exceptionally good veterinarians that I was able to work with and learn from in the process of coming here. I was fairly young. I was very young. I guess I was 29 when I came here, and I got a lot of good experience. Learned a lot from these guys. They were good people.
Tom, what about personalities? And there had to be some characters on the faculty there. One or two you can recall some stories you have here.
Newton Neal was certainly a character. He was a good one. Let's see who else. We had a lot of people come in and go out. I've always said that it's amazing that the number of very famous people that have come through Oklahoma State University College of Veterinary Medicine. You know, they come here and we give them some training, and then they move on somewhere else. And I can't think. We've had.
This is okay. I just thought something stood out in your mind. You might.
No, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head.
Well, Tom, kind of back to your specialty. Yours especially have been sorts of large animal, but also you were department head at one time, I think, of surgery and medicine. Is that right?
Well, no. Actually, I was. Let me just give you a little run through there. Yeah. I was ambulatory clinician for 9 years.
And that's where you said earlier you go out
and take care of the farm calls and usually herd medicine. Occasionally, we do some individual animals, but a lot of herd medicine, herd work. And then in 1974, I had the opportunity to join Colorado State with the USAID program in Kenya, in Nairobi, at the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Nairobi. I actually was on loan from OSU, so I never actually left the protection or auspices of Oklahoma State. I was just loaned to Colorado. They paid OSU, OSU paid me. And I was there for 2 years. And then when I came back...
Tom, can you tell us a little bit about what you did there, some of your experiences? Nairobi sounds pretty fascinating.
It was very fascinating. When I got there, I taught infectious diseases like I had right here in Stillwater. And I was the head of the ambulatory clinic. And that was the primary way that we saw livestock was go to the farms. Because many of these people, nobody had transportation, and we was working primarily with food animals. That was my.
So, what would there have been some domestic animals you worked with there? In addition, we think of as
totally.
Cattle. So
that's all I worked with was domestic animals.
So, what kind of you just cattle primarily?
Cattle, hogs, sheep, goats. Okay. Did a little bit of horse work. Most of the horses were owned by Europeans. The Africans primarily had donkeys, and I worked with the Africans. It was. I had as an ambulatory clinician, we had to have vehicles, used old Land Rovers. I had a driver, guide, interpreter. He served in all three purposes. very nice guy named Gill Kihara. And Gill was he was my right hand as well as my teacher in many cases. I'll tell you a funny story about that. But we would go out to the villages and treat the animals. And many times these villagers would walk in to tell us they had a sick animal. They didn't have transportation for themselves even. It may take them all day to walk in there, and we'd go out the next day to see the sick animal. And we'd go out and treat cattle, and we had some pig farms that were primarily owned by Europeans for the most part. And but all of the villagers had cows and sheep and goats.
Okay.
And cows is what I probably spent most of
I just had in my mind that you might be taking care of some more exotic animals.
You know, that's the only exotic thing that I touched, other than my. I did a lot of hunting while I was over there, and game watching and that kind of stuff. But the only exotic animal I treated was the game department brought a warthog up one day, and they wanted to know if anybody knew how to get a blood sample from this warthog. Well, I bled hogs all my life. I mean, from all my professional career. I said, sure, I can do that. So I went out and I drove this blood sample from this warthog, and they were all impressed with that. And that's the only time I touched one of these animals in a medical sense in the 2 years that I was there. Yes, but mostly it was teaching students.
So you have a story about your interpreter and your driver?
When I first got there, like most graduates in most veterinary schools, when you're going through your curriculum and they start telling you about these exotic diseases that we don't have in this country, you kind of turn it off. You don't listen real good. And I got over there and we went out on this call, and we had this cow. Oh, she was sick. She was so sick. And I didn't have a clue what was the matter with her. And good old Gill, he was helping me along. He went around, he pulled her tongue out of her mouth, and he turned it over, and he says, Dr. Thedford said, are these little blood spots, little petechiae on the bottom of this tongue? And I looked over there, and I said, why, yes, Gill, those sure are. And he walked around, and he pushed a big and large lymph node in front of her shoulder up, and he said, do you think that is this lymph node possibly enlarged? And I says, why, yes, Gill, that sure is. And all this time we had 4 or 5 students standing around, watching us and talking to us. And we did 2 or 3 other things like that, and him giving me the clues. And finally he said, do you suppose this could be East Coast fever? And I said, Gill, I'm sure it is. So I made my first diagnosis of East Coast fever right there with the able assistance of Gill Kihara.
Well, Tom, didn't mean to get you sidetracked. You were talking about kind of I think you were talking about your career and how it evolved. So you had your experience in Kenya, and then from there
back to Oklahoma State. At that time, I was back on ambulatory, and I had an ambulatory clinic from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And at that particular point in time, I was also put 50% extension. So I was extension veterinarian for the state of Oklahoma from 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock the next morning. Those people like to work me to death. After a year of that, Bill Taggart was head of the extension department, and Bill Brock was our dean at that time. And I met with both of them, and I told them, gentlemen, I don't care what you do, but get me out of this mess. You can make me all extension, or you can make me all clinic, or 90% one or the other, but get off of this 50-50 thing. It's about to kill me. So they got together and they agreed, and after a year, then I became the extension veterinarian, and I was 90% extension, 10% clinics.
For the state of Oklahoma.
For the state. Special
contract, probably to different sources of funds and everything.
Well, yeah, this was federal funds for a whole lot of it. And so then that was when I started into the extension program. all 77 counties. You know, I'd go out and give programs for the farmers and work with veterinarians on special cases and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Tom, I was going to ask you a question. Your others, how is that different than a practicing or a teaching veterinarian? I mean, you're in different kinds of activities and services. Could you share a little bit more? You said you went out and visited practitioners.
It was still teaching, but it was mostly teaching farmers how to utilize veterinary service and how to. My primary goal was to teach these guys to recognize disease, to recognize their animals early enough, and get intervention by a veterinarian early enough to get some results. You know, the last thing you want to do is bring in one that's going to die in 24 hours and ask the vet to try to save it because it's not going to work.
Right.
But if you can look at this thing, and the other thing that was going on at that particular time was we were in the throes of brucellosis eradication, Banks disease. And I worked with the Winrock International over in Arkansas, and I worked with the foundation down at Poto. Kerr Foundation. Spit out the Kerr Foundation, and we put together, and I was the spokesman, a videotape to use to tell farmers about brucellosis and the cost and what it could do and what we could do and how the program ran. This was a national program. That videotape was used all across the South, in all the states that were having problems with brucellosis at that time as an educational thing, and actually led up to a job that I took later with Winrock International. And
you took a leave of absence for a year. Is that
took
right?
a leave of absence for a year and went over and worked with them and did a bunch of educational programs for them and put together. I wrote 2 books.
It was part of, as I recall, were you in Haiti as part of your responsibility?
Part of that,
there?
I was in Haiti. I was down in Haiti for a while with that. We sent a bunch of goats down there, and I went over to meet the goats and get them off the plane and get them out to the little town of Hinch, which is way out in the center of the country. And it was interesting. We brought these goats in. They were just pretty good kind of dairy goats, you know. And we had people walk in 50 miles to see these big goats. They couldn't believe how big they were because any goat that got big enough, the bigger the goat, the quicker it got eaten. They'd slaughter it, you know. And so it was kind of a natural reverse selection process, and they were selecting for smaller goats all the time. These goats, some of them wasn't over 18, 20 inches tall.
Oh my God.
Mature goats. You know? And so that was an interesting thing. That was kind of an offshoot that came out of that. But I was an extension veterinarian for 20-some years.
Did you get them to wait long enough there in Haiti to get larger goats? Did that work?
We hoped that these other, I don't know. We left those goats down there. I was just down there 2 or 3 weeks, and then I came back home, and we had them in a program there that they were trying to get people to get more. Well, we were looking at the standpoint of bigger goats have more meat, and the fact dairy goats for milk. One of the very unusual things about the Haitian people at that particular time, I don't know if that's still the case or not, but they believed that if you fed goat's milk to boy babies, that they would not develop their manhood properly. They would somehow or other, it influenced them to where they would not, so they wouldn't give their boy children goat's milk. But they would give the girl children goat's milk. And the poor little things, they all needed some kind of nutrition. And it was one of the projects that they were trying to get these people to do. It was interesting to see weird ideas that people get.
Tom, you said how many, 19 years, did you say? Earlier you were in extension?
It was in about 22 years.
22 years. Now, were you 90% during that time?
The whole time.
The whole time. So a lot of your career then was spent in extension.
Yes. And actually I was an extension veterinarian, did all these programs, worked around the state, going out to visit with farmers this, that, and the other. And usually it was night programs where we get together, working with the county extension agents. And then in '88, I was asked to interview for a job with Kansas State University. And I was accepted as a person to go up there and I went to Botswana in southern Africa for 2 years. And this was another one of those deals just like the other one. I was on loan from Oklahoma State to Kansas State. And there I was doing primarily researching goat diseases, goat problems. So,
And Tom, where was this again? This was in
Botswana, BOTS, WANA.
Just north of South
Just
Africa.
north of South Africa. Yeah. Used to be Bechuana land, I think, back in the days when I went to school, you know. And it's a high dry plateau. It's part of of a desert, a huge desert, Kalahari Desert, and it was very, very dry. They raised a lot of cattle, but goats are the primary meat and milk source for the people. And I was working with them.
And then how long were you there?
2 years.
2 years.
A little over 2 years, actually, about 2 years and 3 or 4
You've had some
months.
pretty incredible experiences, Tom.
Oh yeah,
A lot of
It's
different
great
places.
time.
Well,
It was
from
great.
there, did you then get back into teaching and research? Then later in your career, out of extension.
When I came back, Dr. Joe Alexander was the dean then, and while I was over there, he wrote and asked me if I would come back and be the assistant dean for outreach. So in that respect, I had charge of not only extension, and I was doing a lot of the extension work myself, but the whole extension program, continuing education, alumni affairs. That's where I met you, and also some development. Worked with development with John Cathy, and I was that until I retired. Now, one thing might back up in that interim in there between the time I left, I got back from One Rock International and went to Botswana. One of the things that we did here was develop a satellite-mediated educational program for veterinarians. And we did, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 of those, and we broadcast those things all over the United States, and they were really, really successful. And as a matter of fact, one of my colleagues, Dr. Louis Stratton, who is retired now and lives over in Cookson, told me the other day, and I hadn't realized this, didn't know it, but he wrote a letter to the American Association of Extension Veterinarians, telling them what I'd done in this educational thing, and they were aware of it too, and recommending me for an honor, and I was given the Extension Veterinarian of the Year award in '89.
National?
National.
So National Extension Veterinarian of the Year. Wow, that's pretty high honor, isn't it?
It was very nice.
Great. And what year was that?
And I was in Africa during that time, and my secretary accepted and went down to San Antonio at the American Veterinary Medical Association meeting and accepted the award on my behalf.
Great.
But we did some good things, did some neat stuff on that.
And so the teleconferencing, there'd be several hundred participants in that they would be nationwide, right?
Yes. And we had the videotape that people could check out and look at, and these were usually, most of them were about 4 hours long. I mean, we do two hours.
Most of the people, Tom, be practitioners.
Practitioners in this case.
Well, you were active throughout your career, as you said, with practitioners and alumni relations, and that's where you and I first met. Can you tell me about some of your activities on campus and off campus, in addition to what you talked about in terms of working with practitioners? What were some of the things that you did? Did you consult? Did you put on some conferences we talked about that you did? Did you go out and speak? And what were some of the activities surrounding that?
Well, one of the things we did was back years ago, we used to have what we called our annual OSU conference. And then there was a period of time when we didn't have it. I don't remember what the reason for doing it, but there was a need to do it, and I started that thing back up again. And we had our fall conference for veterinarians, Oklahoma State Fall Conference for Veterinarians, which still goes on today. We reinstituted that, and what we would do is we would bring nationally known speakers into the state, so our practitioners didn't have to go out of state to learn from them. And it was usually a 2-day conference. It still is 2 to 3 day conference, and it grew tremendously. We went from 150 people to we get 400 or 500 now. I think it's really great. That was one of the things. I continued with the farm programs that we go out on to the counties and give to the farmers. One other thing we did was I developed a teleconferencing type thing that we used telephone, and I would put together sets of slides with a narrative, and I could mail these slides out to several county extension people, and then we'd get a conference call set up, and I would sit in my office here in Stillwater and lecture to 3 or 4 counties simultaneously over this conference call. And then we could take questions from each of these county extension directors back in, and then I could answer them.
And they'd be viewing slides, same set of slides you were looking at
I
there
was
in
looking at a set
Stillwater.
of slides, and they were looking at the same set.
That's great. Well, Tom, in your mind, you represented the College of Veterinary Medicine in your relationships with alumni, and then even served as representative of the College of Veterinary Medicine on the Oklahoma State University Alumni Association. Can you share with us a little bit about what you think, how important good relationships are with alumni, and perhaps what you think is the important role the alumni can play?
That was one of the more very stimulating and very frustrating sometimes to try to keep these alumni relations going. I think one of the important things to do is to recognize, try to get to our alumni the fact that so many of the we've got people from our college that have gone out and done national and international things. I mean, these people are well trained, and they do great and glorious things. And a lot of times, I think our local people, they go back to the county or the city that they came from, and they are not exposed as much to these other folks, and they tend to have a little less kind of an inferiority complex, I guess. And I think we need to build that strengthen that knowledge that hey, Oklahoma State did a good job for you, and you did a good job for them, and between the two of you, you learned a lot, and they benefited from having you there. And anytime we can build this kind of a thing, and that was what I tried to do. I'd go out and talk with these alumni groups, and we'd have at the fall conference, we always had an alumni meeting, and we'd have reunions of the classes come in, and we'd have every 5 years, however many that'd been out, that we'd have their reunions if they wanted to have them, and we'd put them to my office. We'd put the reunions together and we'd do that, and it was very important to do that, and I think it helps.
Thomas, I recall you also had a distinguished alumnus award, also as part of your reunions or your annual meeting, whichever that was.
Yes, we started having our distinguished alumni awards, and we would have usually it was one of the older classes that we would get the nominations from, and then we would honor those people, and that's still going on today too.
When I went to visit with Dr. Joe Alexander, former dean of college, he talked about the importance of relationships in I think in 2 or 3 powerful ways that you might speak to. One is, of course, it'd help with fundraising, but he said as often as not, they would connect you with someone else. I mean, a corporation, another individual, an owner that didn't have a relationship or degree, with Oklahoma State University was important in creating and them helping a network out there, helping create relationships, help with fundraising, and then bringing business to the college. Is that your perception as well?
Yes, it was. That was one of the more important things I think that this alumni relations did. One example was one of our early graduates knew this gentleman, Mr. Sidlington, and this guy was a farmer. He had a little dairy farm, and the vet brought him over here, showed him the college, showed him what we could do, and the vet school and animal science department. And this guy was very impressed with that. And when he passed away, he left something like $2.5–3 million, maybe $4. I don't know. It was a bunch of money. And half of it went to College of Agriculture, and half of it went to College of Veterinary Medicine. And this guy I don't even know if he graduated from high school.
Mr. Sellington.
Yeah. And we've got 2 chairs that just funded, in addition to some scholarships, I think. But that's where, and this has been repeated innumerable times, and many times since I retired, that we've had someone that a veterinarian knew that wanted to do something charitable, and they'd come to the vet and say, "Can you suggest something?" And when they suggest Oklahoma State University, well, that's a good deal. That's what happens. What,
Tom, you've had a very varied, all the way from teaching to extension to research. These areas of your professional career, which have given you the most personal satisfaction?
Oh, that's easy. It's teaching.
Teaching.
Yeah, I love to teach. I enjoy the students. I enjoy teaching them, and that's been my biggest thing. I was lucky enough to one year win the Norton Award for teaching.
Outstanding teacher award, Norton Award. You remember what year that was?
Oh, I can't remember. It was,
Way back.
It was back there a ways, and that was a great thing. It was a fine thing. I really enjoyed that, and I still teach. I have one little course I teach. It's a 2-hour course in a small room in medicine and surgery. I teach sheep, goats, and llamas, and I do that in the spring each year, and it's an elective. And this coming year, I've got 53 or 4 students signed up for it, which I think is pretty good.
Llamas is a hobby of yours, right?
Yes.
You own how many llamas now?
Got 19 now.
19. And how many years you been in the llama business?
Oh, since '84. So
you're probably an expert in llamas, aren't you?
I've messed with them a long time.
And notice you got some goats as well.
Got some goats.
Looking at your window here.
I got some goats this year to eat some brush up around here, but that's just I like goats. I used to raise sheep. At one time, I raised registered Suffolk sheep. So the small ruminant thing I've been involved in pretty heavy for a number of years.
Great. What maybe back and up maybe 30,000 feet and get a kind of larger view. How's the college in your mind, Tom, changed over the years? 40 to nearly 50 years you've been.
Well, when I came here, we had maximum of 48 students. We had, I think it was 7 states that we took students from, contract states. So we didn't have very many Okies came in. We would have 1, maybe 2 girls per class. Probably 60–70% of the students were going into food animals or large animals, horses or cattle or this type of thing. Today, we have at least, I think it's got to be like 80% by state statute, Oklahoma graduates or Oklahoma residents, which is good. About 70% female.
Wow.
About 10% maybe at best or going into food animals or large animals, food animals. It's been an almost complete reversal. I don't know whether I'm qualified to say whether it's better or worse. It's certainly different. It's certainly a different situation. I think we have a real problem trying to get more food animal people into that area now. And it's going to take some special efforts to do it. And it's harder work, and it's not quite as rewarding as a small animal. There's so many more things that they can do with dogs and cats. Practice a higher quality medicine, they refer to it. A lot of times
And it's primarily they're in their facilities.
Yeah.
And they're not going out.
Yeah, and they can
Conditions are better.
do all kinds of lab tests, and they can do all kinds of diagnostic imaging and that kind of thing. It just gets too expensive on the food animals. You know, and that's one of the things that I enjoy about teaching this course that I teach. I try to teach it from two standpoints. I teach it from the standpoint of production animal medicine, or you got a herd of goats or sheep out here, and you're raising them for meat and fiber, and you have to pay attention to the price that these are, the value of these animals in your diagnostics and your workup. You also have pet goats and sheep, and the fact that in many cases money's not an object there. They want that animal saved. Whereas if that were a production animal, they would say we need to sacrifice it to find out so we can protect the rest of them. And I try to cover both of these angles and try to get them to understand that there is a difference, and it's their responsibility, the veterinarian's responsibility, to determine what he's going to do or what she's going to do, where are you going, how are you going to handle these cases.
How do you, what kind of alternatives do you give your
Yeah,
clients?
Right. Sometimes you have to give them several alternatives, and some of them may not be the best quality medicine under the circumstances.
Well, Tom, what have been some significant milestones, significant achievements at the college during your tenure?
Oh, probably the biggest and greatest leap forward is a new hospital. And I think it was back 25 years ago or so, but it just totally changed our whole way of doing things. The library is many times better than it was. Our facilities are so much better. Our staff numbers have increased. Our research potential has increased. I personally sometimes feel that maybe we've sometimes I don't think we're doing quite as good a job of teaching as we used to. We've kind of shifted to the research thing a little more, and that makes it a little difficult on some of these kids, I think. And a good teacher's hard to find, and when you get one, you really need to hang on to them. And if they're a little backward in their research capability, well, sometimes it's worth ignoring that, I think, just to keep that teacher in there.
Okay. How is you talk about changes at Oklahoma State University. In your mind, how has the profession, veterinary medicine profession, changed over the years?
Well, we have a lot more veterinarians than we used to have. They do a much more complete job. I mean, my goodness, when you stop and think about, we do magnetic MRI or resonance imaging. So we do CAT scans now. We have all kinds of blood tests and things that when I went through school, these were a dream. We could do an X-ray and blood count, and that was about it.
The technology's been
Technology's
changes.
advanced tremendously, and So much of the technology advancements that have occurred in veterinary medicine have been precursors to advancement in human medicine.
Mm-hmm.
They came through the veterinary channels first, and then they went into human medicine in many cases. And so there's been a whole lot of changes, and now there's a change. Now they're pushing more towards the concept of one medicine. You know, human, animal, zoonotic problems, meaning that they occur in all species. You know, whether human or animal, and that's a different attitude. It's kind of come up in the last few years. So there's been a lot of changes in the profession, and I think for the most part they're good.
And I think, as you indicated earlier, probably the change into more women.
Oh yeah,
absolutely, into veterinary medicine.
And this has had some good effects. I think, at the risk of, I don't want to sound sexist at all, but I think the women have made the profession more gentle. They have made it more caring in many cases. So guys, we were kind of rude and probably socially unacceptable in many cases, but I think there's been some changes, and I think there've been good changes for the most part. You know, one of the kind of maybe not quite so positive things is the profession is, to some degree, has advanced more towards a second income profession rather than a primary income profession, because of so many women in there. The women are still the ones that are the mothers and have the kids, you know, and a lot of them are not full time.
Working in clinics with other doctors.
Right. It's they're part time. Maybe they're part time, or their children come first, which they should. You know, as far as I'm concerned, that's the right thing to do. But it has changed the dynamics, I think, a little bit. And we adapted. We took care of that.
Tom, let me stop here for a minute. Tom, one thing we were talking about here just a minute ago is some of the research that for a small, relatively small, say, sort of under-resourced university like ours in the College of Veterinary Medicine, we've produced some research that have made millions and millions of dollars of difference in industry. Could you just maybe summarize or share some of those key research contributions that we've made in our college?
Yeah, one of the first ones was way back there. We were one of we, as a matter of fact, had the patent on the only usable, effective anaplasmosis vaccine. And anaplasmosis was and still is a major source of loss in livestock and cattle. And that vaccine was one of the first ones that came out. Was the only one for many years.
Which professors were involved in research in that area? Do you recall?
There's a guy named Cleaver that worked up at Pahuska. Bill Brock was involved in it. I don't know who else. Following on that line of blood parasites, which is what that is, Sidney Ewing has worked with Ehrlichia, which is a parasite primarily of dogs and cats, and he's done a lot of work in that. Kathy Kosan and her group there at the college have done a lot of work with tick-borne diseases, blood parasite tick-borne diseases, and they're just about to come out with a vaccine in that area. It's an advancement on the anaplasmosis thing. That's going to be a tremendous amount of value.
Tom, some of your research, I know back several years ago, was in wild animal diseases. Did you work in some of those areas?
I didn't do any actual bench research. You know, most of the stuff that I've done has been practical, applied type thing. I've worked with drug approvals, or when I was overseas, I was working with production problems and disease problems as far as from a practical aspect. I've not been involved in the so-called bench research to any great degree. I have worked with a number of researchers on other things like Alcosan. When Al was active here in research, I worked with him, and we were a pretty good team. He was a good researcher, and I had a good practical approach to it. But the two of us together, we made some good progress.
What about anaplasmosis? A lot of research we've done in that area you mentioned, but then also brucellosis, is that correct?
And brucellosis, the main thing I did with that, I didn't, now we've had some people do brucellosis research here, and they've done a good job on that. They've come up with some new vaccines there, which have been, again, this is large animal type stuff. My involvement in that was primarily from an educational standpoint, making the farmers aware of the costs and the downside of this disease and what it would mean to eradicate it and how they could benefit from it. And that had to be done regardless of how much knowledge we had on eradicating and preventing the disease, because if you didn't have the support of the farmers, it wasn't going to happen. And that's, I spent about probably 6 or 8 years working on that, and that had a lot of, we had a lot of good things happen there. Some other things that we've done as far as research in we've done some reproductive disease research. It's been done in several people worked on that. It's still currently from bovine respiratory disease. There's been a world of research done on that. Tony Comfort, Bob Fulton, Bob Smith's been involved in it. There's a whole, these are the ones I just pull off the top of my head, but there's been a big effort in bovine respiratory disease research. And worked with Bob Fulton on blue tongue back some years ago. I've been kind of, where I fit into these research things, I've kind of been a foot man. I've worked with the farmers, and I've worked with the going out and working with livestock on the situation. They're kind of the brains. I've been the brawn, I guess you'd say. But there's been like you say, there's been a tremendous amount of good for the livestock industry that's come out of this school in the form of good research. And that's above and beyond the fact we've had some really good practitioners and clinicians.
Tom, was there some research that lent itself to human medicine in HIV and AIDS? Did we do some research, some work with in partnership with the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center?
I think there was. I don't know much about it. There was some stuff done there, and I know that there's been some. I think there's some things that have been done with the university in general, as well as health sciences, through the lab animal facilities that we have here now. And I'm not very. I can't speak to it. Don't know much about what's been going on.
All right. Appreciate the wrap on that, Tom. Anything else, any significant contributions to college we haven't covered?
I can't think of it. We've had I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. I'm sure there's other stuff we hadn't done.
Tom, what guys, through all the years and all the different ways you've been associated with Oklahoma State University, what do you have some favorite memories of your time at OSU?
Well, I guess I'd have to say that Oklahoma State's been good to me, and they have. I've had some opportunities to do some things that had I just stayed in practice, I never would have. I've so enjoyed the opportunities to travel to Africa and attending. They've supported me so much in learning opportunities. For example, back not long before I retired, I had the opportunity to attend a meeting of the International Sheep Veterinary Society in Armadale, Australia. and I got to go over there. And then I also got, while I was gone, I went over and visited New Zealand, you know, and I saw that, and the opportunity to see these other societies and how they operate, and that's been very helpful to me in teaching small ruminant medicine and surgery because of the different aspect and the different way that they do things over there, and how it affects our situation in this country. So that was a good memory, and I sure enjoyed my African times. They were really good. I've had some really fun times with the students. They're challenging. They're sharp. They're smart. They keep you on your toes, and sometimes they can. Sometimes they could almost swallow you. They just sink your boat if they wanted to. But they're nice and they don't do it. So I've really enjoyed the teaching aspects.
I mean, there's some special teachers, some special students that stand out in your mind that you're a teacher mentor to that have gone on and been successful.
Yeah.
Any names you'd want to throw out there?
Well, I think the Du Bois kids, Paul, the original, and then these boys, they've been good, and one of them's a wife, and Bob Morris was a good kid that I worked with a lot of years that I still have contact with. More recent one is my neighbor kid that was kind of my boy. I had two girls, and he was my neighbor kid, and he's my boy Mike Lunsford. He's in practice over in Northwest Arkansas now, and Mike was a really neat young man, and I've enjoyed him all the way up until I've had a number of them come out here and work for me. Suzanne Caruso was in small animal practice over in Tulsa. She was one of my helpers out here on the farm, took care of the llamas while I was gone. And Joni Noel helped her son. And we've had, Tamara, there's been so many. The most recent was Brand Gardner and his wife. They're in school now, and just neat kids. They're just good, and I really enjoy being with them and working with them. Brand's been a really interesting.
We were talking earlier about some of your recognitions, some highlights in your career. Talking about the Norden Outstanding Teacher Award, your National Extension Veterinary Extension Person of the Year. Other awards or special memories you have? Recognition.
I got a recognition from the Oklahoma Veterinary Medical Association, a special award from them. I've had, when I retired, the Veterinary Alumni Association made a special recognition, and there's been a number of things. I guess one thing that I did enjoy too was for 2 or 3 2-year terms, I was on the Secretary of Agriculture, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture's advisory board for foreign animal diseases. And I got to go to meetings in Washington, D.C. in that area and visit with other professionals from around the country on that. That was a nice thing. Another thing that I got to do, the university allowed me to do, was back in the 80s, I was chosen to attend the Plum Island Foreign Animal Disease Diagnosticians course. And there's only been 2 or 3 veterinarians, I think, from OSU that's ever had the ability to do that, the opportunity to do that. And they gave me the time off and allowed me to go do that, and that was really a highlight. That was a wonderful thing.
Well, I'm sure, Tom, through the years there's been some frustrations and some disappointments as well. Some of your frustrations?
I guess one of the things that I kind of wish I'd had the opportunity to do, but under the circumstances it just didn't work out. I would like to, at some point in time, had been able to go on and do finish my graduate work. I did some graduate work here at OSU. I almost got a master's in parasitology, and then I got promoted, and I couldn't get the degree here. And I actually looked into going away to pursue a master's or a PhD, and every time I put my pencil to it, I couldn't afford to do it. It was just one of those things that I just, with a family and responsibilities here, it just didn't. I was better off to stay right where I was. And there's been times when I wish I'd been able to go ahead and do that. The university, or maybe it's the state, I don't know, they had a policy there that you couldn't get a degree from, if you were a tenured faculty member, you couldn't get a degree from here. I think that's a little short-sighted.
Tom, does the college at this time, do they support faculty members in getting advanced degrees?
Oh yeah, they encourage it, as a matter of fact. Advanced degrees or board certification. I was never board certified, and I did not get an advanced degree, and I don't think you could go the way I've gone without those now. I think that's a given. I'm not. It's probably okay. I'm kind of a dinosaur in that respect, but that's all right.
Well, you alluded earlier, Tom, to the fact that you've had other opportunities. You went to go other places. What's kept you at OSU so long?
That's a good question. I can answer that from several angles. One, I could have gone. I was offered the job as extension veterinarian for the state of Nevada. There was two things that kept me from going there. One, cost of living was a whole lot higher. I was going to get a nice raise in salary, but when I looked at increased cost of living compared to here, I could sell my house and 5 acres I had at that time, and it would bring nearly enough to buy a 2-bedroom condo out there. And it just wasn't feasible. Economically, it was not. It would have been a step backward, and I didn't feel that at my stage in life I could do that. I think I could have gone to Alabama as their extension veterinarian. I just liked Oklahoma better. I was offered a position as veterinarian with USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development in Washington, D.C. It was a 2-year appointment, and I just didn't think I wanted to live in Washington, D.C. I thought it would have been a fantastic opportunity, but I just liked Stillwater better. And then when I got ready to retire, I had people ask me, said, well, where are you going to move to? And I said, man, I'm not going to move anywhere. I'm going to stay right here.
So we for a Texan, we made an Okie out of you.
You made an Okie out of me. And they may shoot me in Texas for that, but that's okay. I like them. And it's, one of the things about Stillwater and OSU, you've got so many. You've got Oklahoma City and Tulsa. You've got things in the arts. You've got athletics. You've got all kinds of entertainment things that you can do, and we've got good medical facilities. And I've got a lot of good friends here. Stillwater's just home.
It's a good place to live.
It's a good place to live, and I'm happy being here.
What, again, from your observation over, many years, what advice would you give to a current or future faculty member or administrator about how to best advance the mission of the OSU College of Veterinary Medicine?
Well, I think there's 2 or 3 things that could be involved here that you've got to keep in mind. Number one, the primary reason we're here is the students. You've got to take care of those kids. make sure that they get the right kind of education, the right kind of attention, and the right kind of help. If there's any way you can help them with their tuition thing, I think that's a good deal. And that's, I don't know if you're aware or not, but I established a scholarship to help with that. And I think that's something that has to be done. I think you have to remember to advance the school, you got to remember the practitioners out here. They have a integral interest in it, and they're part of what makes it operate and keep it going. Going back to that thing about they know people that can help the school, and I think that's very, very important. I don't think you can ever walk away from your base of graduates, alumni, practitioners in the state, and many of the practitioners don't necessarily have to be just OSU alumni.
Right.
We get them in here from everywhere, and they're all important. And if we show we care, we show we're interested, I think that we can advance our college that way. I'm not a very good person to get involved in politics, but there's a lot of people out here and our graduates that can. I know right now we have 3 representatives in the State House that are veterinarians, and our relationship with them is certainly not going to hurt us. Yeah. And it's important to keep that thing in mind. I think from an administrative standpoint, I probably wasn't a very good administrator. But I think that there's some things that are important there, and I think a really good administrator surrounds himself or herself with capable people, and then listens to them. And it'll make life a whole lot easier for them if they do that. And let them, give them their head, and give them the reins, to turn loose the reins and let them do their thing. Is if they're good, and if they're smart, and if they're capable, they're going to make you look really good.
What areas do you think OSU College of Veterinary Medicine should look to in the future to advance the college? Some specific areas we think we should be putting if we had additional resources,
where
we should put it.
I think one of the things that would be really worthwhile, and something that I think we could do a good job, I think we're unique in that we have such a broad agricultural base in this state, and we have such a big food animal base in this state, that's one of the places we ought to be pushing. I realize it's not the most lucrative. I realize it's not the most genteel. Large animal practice is hard, dirty work, but it's important work. And when you look at the fact that we've got literally millions and millions and millions of acres of land in this world that are not capable of producing crops, but they are capable of producing a high quality protein with livestock, and that we need to keep them healthy and alive and gaining. That we can't. We're going to have to depend on animals for our production, our food and fiber in the future, and we need veterinarians to take care of that. And I think with Oklahoma's broad base in that area, we could be a center here. And that's one of the places I'd like to see us go. Whether that's going to happen or not, it's going to be, I just don't know. But I think it would be a good place to go.
Tom, what, I don't think of in these terms, but what's been your legacy, do you think, over the years?
I don't know. I don't guess I ever thought about it much.
You're old enough now, you can be thinking about your legacy.
I'm definitely old enough, that's for sure. I guess if I were, I would like to be remembered as a fair, honest, and practical teacher. That's what I guess would be what I would like to see left, and I hope it happens.
You're, and while at the same time you've been, I'm sure, a wonderful teacher, your legacy's been even broader than that, Tom. I mean, when you think of your legacy, extension and people's lives you've touched, practitioners, how do you want to be remembered with those people that you work with, alumni, practitioners, general public?
Well, I'd like to be remembered as a supporter of our college and the university, and again, someone that was practical and open-minded, and would. I guess one of the things that I did for many years was I carried a lot of ideas from the field back to the school. And I tried to take the information from the school back to the field, and a purveyor of information and goodwill I guess is where it would fit in there. That's probably not a good answer, but
Tom, what if anything would you change? Years you talked about perhaps getting some graduate degree in training. Anything else that you look back and if you had a chance to do it differently, you'd change it a little bit?
not much. I think I've had a really, really interesting life. When you just kind of break it down and look at the profession from what the parts that I've been involved in. I was a ranch veterinarian for a while. I was a general practitioner for a while. I was a small animal practitioner for a while. I've been a teacher for a lot of years. I was an extension veterinarian for a lot of years. I was involved in international development for 5 years. The profession has been very, very good to me, and I have enjoyed it very much. I'm still involved in it to some degree, but I've moved on to some other things. Somebody asked me one time, said, well, how can you quit being a veterinarian? I said, well, I guess I was smart enough to learn to be a veterinarian. I can be smart enough to learn to do something else. and I've enjoyed retirement, and I've enjoyed doing other things and taking care of my livestock out here on this little farm. And I do woodworking. I enjoy doing that. I enjoy reading. I enjoy learning things still, and I really enjoy traveling. We do a lot of that. I don't know if I'd change anything much. I think it would have probably been advantageous from a career development standpoint to have done graduate work or got a board certification. But I might have moved on somewhere and I wouldn't be in Stillwater, and I'm not sure that's a good idea.
That's good. Well, Tom, anything else we haven't covered? Is your chance to kind of share some things with us? Anything that you'd like to add?
I guess one thing that throughout my career, I've had the support of some really, really fantastic folks. My parents were very supportive in what I wanted to do and helped where they could. Going through school, my great uncle and my granddad assisted me monetarily to help me get through. It didn't seem like much at the time, but it was enough to keep me going, keep me propped up. My first wife, we were married for 42 years before she died, and she always supported me in everything I did. You know, she went to Africa with me twice, and my daughters were supportive in everything that happened. And Libby has been fantastic in supporting me in the same thing. And I couldn't have done it without these people. And I guess I consider myself probably one of the luckiest guys in the world who have had this many good and strong and supportive folks around me. My four sisters, you know, they've been supportive on things that I've done. And I've been off up here in Oklahoma, they're all down in Texas, you know, but yet they think this is a good deal. I couldn't have done what I've done without the help of all these folks, that's for sure.
Tom, you bring up maybe a question too about support. What about deans? You worked with, gosh, I mean, 6, 7, 8 deans or more over your career.
One, I think.
Any thoughts on any of the deans have been particularly helpful to you that you had a great relationship with?
Yeah. Bill Brock was dean when I went to Africa the first time. He encouraged me to do it. He protected me while I was gone, and he assisted me when I got back. Bill was involved in our Guatemala project,
right.
And he was aware of the broadening experience of international work and what it could mean to you, and he really encouraged that. And I really appreciated that with him. He was a real pillar in that respect. Pat Morgan's been a friend for years. He and I've worked together on a lot of different things, and he was one that when I went off on my he was dean when I went off to Arkansas, and then Joe Alexander supported me and gave me the opportunity to be one of his deanlets, we referred to it, one of his assistant deans, you know, or associate deans, and I think we had had a really good relationship there. I think Joe did a good job of. He was an extremely good person to work with fundraising and people out in the field, and he kind of did what I talked about a while ago. I think he surrounded himself with capable people. He let them run the place, and he kind of got out of their way. And I appreciated that. He let me run my shop the way I thought it ought to be ran, and I think it ran smooth, and I think it did the things it was set up to do.
What do you think about having one of our own, Dean Michael Lorenz, Dean of college now? You probably remember maybe teaching him some classes.
Michael Lorenz was one of my students.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Lorenz was my next door neighbor when he was a senior. Michael Lorenz helped me, very instrumental in helping me save my old Dalmatian dog when she picked up rat poisoning, strychnine. Mike's one of the brightest and best I think we've ever produced, and I think he's done a fantastic job. And I've been extremely pleased with what he's brought to the college and the way he's handled it. I think with his experience in other schools, his experience at Cornell as a grad student in Georgia and then Kansas State, I think they prepared him well to come here and do what he's done. And I think he's learned a lot from them and has progressed right on up that line. And I see a bright future for us in the school. I think it was a good move when he came here, and I'm pleased with what he's done. As a general rule, I think I've got along with all of the deans that we've had. The only one we had was nobody got along with him. He didn't last very long. Back some years ago, but Brock was good. Pat was good. Joe has been good, and Mike has been very, very good. I think things have gone pretty smooth. I think we've been fortunate to get these people, and they've each brought their own Oh, their own little differences, their little quirks, their little part to build on, and it's been, I think it's helped the school. I guess I'd have to say that the profession of veterinary medicine is small, and the number of schools is very small. And when you look in the grand scheme of things, with all of these schools and all of these big name schools here, there, and yon, maybe Oklahoma State College of Veterinary Medicine, or Center for Veterinary Health Sciences, as they call it now, maybe we haven't garnered the peak that some of these other schools have in an area. But I think when it comes down to producing the best practitioners of any place, that we're tops. I think we're absolutely tops. I think we've produced the best and then the brightest as far as those going out and doing the work of the profession out and when you see what they've done and you go back and you look at the accomplishments of our graduates and it's just fantastic. This little old school that has not been supported many times as well as it could be from an economic standpoint, and sometimes we had to just pull our belts in and just really grunt to keep things going, and it's done a fantastic job.
Great. Anything else?
I can't think of anything right off.
Appreciate it. Thanks.